Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look and installing the BAKFlip G2 hard folding tonneau cover on a 2022 Nissan Frontier. Having a truck is great for a number of utilities, and having a bed to be able to throw stuff in the back is wonderful, but when you park your vehicle, that does leave the bed exposed, and that's also exposed to the elements as well. Well, the glory of this hard tonneau cover is going to make it, with your locking tailgate, a nice, secure storage space for the contents of your truck bed. Now, some of your more traditional tonneau covers are going to be a soft material, which is great for the elements, but really a utility knife can go through those pretty quick and people can gain access to your bed. And also, they don't really support any weight. This right here can support up to 300 pounds when evenly distributed, so that's pretty nice in itself. I also really like the design of this, as it does sit really low profile, almost flush with the bed. Some of your toppers or your tonneau covers can actually raise it up a little bit. It's not the best look. This one is real sleek looking, and I do like the design because it keeps the water out with the nice seals and also has drains as well. Now, this also has a tri-fold design, which is really nice because if you just need to load a few things in the back, you can simply just lower your tailgate and throw it in there. If you need a little bit more access, no problem. You just simply pull these cables here and you can fold this back, and that's going to gain you a little bit more space. Well, if you need larger items, you can just simply pull this back and fold another one back and gain even more space. And then, if you need to fully use your bed, no problem, same thing. You can just fold this up. And then, once you really need to use all of your bed, you can simply clip this into place here. Got one on the other side as well. Tighten that up, and then you'll see you actually have bumpers here, so it can rest against the cab itself. So now we have a ton of extra space to be able to load up our bed, and we actually have a prop rod here, and this is going to allow us to keep this bed, or this tonneau cover, folded up and out of the way so it's not going to flop while we're driving. And you can see that's not going to fold over while we're driving. Now, this is lightweight aluminum, so that's going to make it really nice for when folding it down. It's not super heavy. You can see here I'm able to move it, yet it's still very sturdy. So you get all the perks of lightweight, not adding a ton of extra weight to your vehicle, but also the structural rigidity of nice aluminum. Now, aluminum also has some other benefits in the fact that it is rust proof. So going along with that, it's got a nice black powder coat finish with a nice texture here that's going to prevent UV from destroying it. And then that's something that you'll see on some of your soft tonneau covers, is over time that sun just kind of eats away at those. You're not going to have that issue with this. And also, all these panels are actually insulated, so it actually feels a little bit more sturdy, and it does give it rigidity with that insulation in there. Now, if you're wondering how the installation goes on this is actually a pretty easy one. In fact, there's no drilling that's required on any part of this, and you can accomplish this with a 15mm socket, a 13mm socket, or wrench, and also just a rag with some alcohol to just clean the surface for the adhesives. But other than that, it's pretty easy to do. So now let's take a look at that installation right now. To begin our installation, first we're going to need to check if we have a drop-in liner. And this one does not. You can see the exposed metal here. So what we're going to do is put a bulkhead seal, and that way it's going to keep this nice and sealed up and also not going to scratch. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and wipe this down, and then I'm going to go back with a little bit of rubbing alcohol just to make a nice clean surface for us to attach our seal here. So just make sure you get any dust, dirt, debris that's in this area nice and cleaned up, and that isopropyl again is just going to make a nice surface to mate up our seal. So I'm just going to start by peeling back one end here, and I'm going to put this right at that corner there. We want it squared up as possible, and the good thing is the width of this is just about as wide as the metal. So what we'll do is we'll just kind of work our fingers down and going the whole length here. So you can see we have a little bit of excess here, so I'm going to go ahead and just cut it flush with this plastic mount. So now go ahead, you're gonna wanna close your tailgate and grab the rail that's side specific. And the way you're gonna tell which side it is, where it goes, is you're gonna have this silver bracket here. That should be all the way towards the front and facing towards the inside. You're gonna see there is a little foam pad here on the end, and that's gonna be nice to kind of just square this up against the front of our bed. So we'll just push that up, make sure that it's sitting kind of flush here, and overall it's looking like it's fitting pretty well. So now we're gonna need to grab our bracket here, and this is just gonna kind of slide in. The nut is gonna face out or towards us in the middle here, and so we may need to slide this in by lifting the rail a little bit just to gain a little bit of clearance. Open that nut up if you need to, and we're gonna go 6 to 9 inches back from the front. So make sure that those teeth are biting into this upper rail here. And then once we're right where we need to be, kind of put a little bit of pressure up top. And there's that 6 to 9 inches. And I'm just gonna go ahead and slightly clamp this down a little here. Also make sure that this portion is pushed up. Now when putting your brackets in place, it's important that you have this portion here is gonna bite kind of on this backside here. So it's gonna slide up, and then you're gonna see this slotted section here is going to actually go into the rail on this, so that way it can actually bite into it. So just make sure that you have those properly aligned when putting your brackets in place. Something else that's important is you're gonna want these grooves to actually fit into each other. So it's very possible when it's loose that it can slide down. Just make sure that that's actually properly aligned by putting that groove into here. And that's just gonna allow for a proper secure fit on this clamp. So the inside clamp is gonna actually top out once it kind of reaches that point. So I'm giving it a little bit of upward pressure. That way it stays in the groove here. I can also make sure that I have some bite on our actual bed rail here. So once we have that kind of in place, I'm just gonna kind of snug it down for now. And you also want to keep that downward pressure here. That way it's going to be nice and snug when it's actually sitting in the bed rails here. So now we're going to put a second rail in place right around the center area. And that way we can kind of disperse the pressure along the rail. Now something I'm going to point out is in the kit there's actually going to be 2 styles of clamps here. So there's going to be 4 of these. Those are going to be the front 2 on each side. Your rear one's actually going to be the longer one. So just make sure you're using the proper clamp. So we'll go ahead and find kind of a good center point here, and then we'll get this clamp in place. So just make sure you're putting that downward pressure on the top here. That way it cinches tight. And I'm just using a 15mm socket. We don't have to crank these down super tight. We just kind of want it snug to kind of hold it in place and maintain that kind of bite around those rails. So we have that one in place. Now we can move along to our rear one. So now our rear clamp is going to go about 6 inches back from the actual tailgate. So we'll go ahead and get this clamped in. That's actually going to go in this open spot. This one has these factory kind of accessory slots here. So we'll just go ahead and get this one mounted up. Again, you can see it's got a little bit of lift here, so I'm going to just push this down while doing it. That way it stays nice and snug. And there's actually 2 grooves here, so we're going to try to see which one works better, but I'm going to kind of stick with this low one. That way the teeth are kind of evenly level with one another, and that should give it a nice clamped down security. Now this rear one, I ended up using this top groove here. That's just going to give it more bite onto the actual rail. The back one's bottomed out, and so raising this forward is going to have a few more teeth on that to really snug it down. So this is a 13. The other ones were 15, so just make sure you have that socket handy. And again, keep that pressure on there. Now with everything lightly tightened in place, once we're happy with the actual placement of it, all the gaps are good, we can actually go back and tighten it down until it's snug, and then just give it another half turn, and that's just gonna kind of make sure that it stays in place. So I'm snug here, so I'm just gonna give it a half turn, and that should be plenty to hold that in for a long time. So now you're going to want to unfold your bed topper, and you're going to see there's going to be 2 pre-drilled holes, and that's going to just be for our clip here. That way when you fold your bed up, you can actually snap it in. So we'll go ahead and get this in place, and there's going to be the hardware here. You have a little pin here that this is going to slide on the bottom portion, and this is going to just tighten down through here. Now you want to make sure you're just using hand tools here. We don't have to get too crazy tightening it down. So we'll go ahead and pass these underneath. And then from here we should be able to just take our screws and screw them in. So go ahead and make sure these are nice and snug. Again, you don't have to overly tighten these, just nice, good snug feel with the screwdriver should be plenty. And then we'll go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. So now while we're on this end, you'll probably see this opening here, and that's where our knobs are going to pass through, and those are simply going to tighten into those brackets that were on the front of the rail. So make sure you have the proper orientation of the way that your actual topper is. This is going to face towards the cab, so we're going to lift this up, get it in place, and try to align these holes here. So now with an extra set of hands, we'll just go ahead and get this topper in place. Again, we're going to just align these holes here with that bracket. We're just going to kind of get this in place here, and then as moving this around, I can actually get this hole to where it's kind of aligned here. You really just want it sitting nice and flush here. You can see where we put our seal, so we're going to push this forward a little bit more, just make sure that's pushed against that. So now we're going to need to actually get this in place and mount it down onto that bracket, and we're going to just grab our knob. Now this was kind of pre-put together here in our hardware kit, but we're going to separate it out, and we'll have this portion with a rubber washer. So this is going to feed up top here, and there is a plug here, so just you can go ahead and peel that off. And then what we're going to do is actually kind of go underneath, and this is going to slide into this bracket here, and you're going to kind of just do this as follows with your rubber washer. Again, this is all going to be underneath the bracket, but you'll have your rubber washer, your flat washer, and then your split washer, and then finally the knob. And then we should be able to just go underneath there and tighten this up. So I've gone ahead and just made sure that our seal is actually nice and aligned on that back bed there. And so what we're going to do now is tighten these down. We don't have to get too crazy right now. We may need to make some final adjustments, but you can definitely make them snug right now. So now we'll just follow the order of rubber washer, flat washer, and then our split washer. And you may need to push that down if it pushes back up, but pretty easy here. Just kind of push back on that flat surface, and then we'll just get this threaded on here and just get it kind of snug here. And we'll go ahead and do the same on the other side. So now with those snugly tightened down, we're going to just unfold our bed cover here and make sure that it lines properly with the tailgate. So overall, it's sitting pretty flush here. There's nothing that's really causing issue here, and you can see it is aligned properly, just kind of following the line here. So overall, looking pretty good. So now that we're happy with the fit on the tailgate, we're going to go ahead and fold this back up. Now with this folded up, you're going to see that it does actually rest against the cab, and you're going to want to make sure that you don't scratch your truck. So there's these cab guards here, and they have some adhesive. And so what I'm going to do is see where the points of contact are, which it looks like these little cab corners here, and also kind of right above our sliding rear window. So where those points of contact are, we're just simply going to take this and we're going to place it on here. Just peel this red tape off, or this red backing I should say. And I'm just going to kind of run it along the line so we know that it's nice and lined up here. So now we can see that's going to cushion it when it does rest against the actual cab here. So I'm going to go ahead and put the other two on. So now while we have this folded up, we're going to want to put our drains in. And so up here, you're going to see a nipple that this is going to attach to. So we'll just go ahead and slide this in place. And this is just going to route outside. That way the water doesn't collect in here and it has a place to drain. So I'm going to just pull the plug here And then this should just kind of sit in here. So what I'm actually going to do is take a drill. I'm going to drill a hole, and that way it sits nice and snug in here and it'll stay in place. So I'll go ahead and get this drilled out, put this in place, and then we can plug it back in. And the best way to get a nice hole here, if you have a 7/8 drill bit, that's going to work great. But what I'm actually going to do is drill a pilot hole right there in the center, and using a step bit, that's going to allow me to get the proper dimensions. So have this handy. That way when you drill the holes, you can kind of get a nice tight fit. That way it kind of pops in place and it's going to stay in place. So if you over drill it, this could pop out. So just less is more. So take your time here and just test fit it a few times. Now this is rubber, so if you don't get a clean drilled hole, that's totally fine. You can actually use like a utility knife to kind of just give it some relief cuts here. But you can see this is going to hold in place, and that way that water is going to actually drain out of the bed. So I'm going to do that to the other side, and we'll get this put in place. So now we're going to unfold our bed, and what we're going to do here is each time this latches in, we're going to check to make sure that we actually have good contact here on both locking points. So what we're looking for here is that this has proper bite onto the actual bracket here, and also not too tight, so that way it's latching in place. It's also not going to bind up. So go ahead and check each one as you undo it on both sides. And if it is slightly off, that's a good chance to not only check your side rail, but really you can kind of just change the alignment of the bed just by unscrewing those knobs at the front. You want this perfectly set up to where it's not going to bind every time you fold or unfold. Ours is looking like it's pretty good here, so we'll just double check and make sure. We'll unfold it back and see if there's any spots that seem a little tighter on one side than the other. That way we have it all ironed out. So now once you have this all actually folded out, it's a good time to check your seals here that they aren't kind of peeled in. You can undo those. Now you are going to have some wrinkles here just because it's been folded up during shipping, but once your truck's out in the sunlight, it's going to warm up and kind of settle. If you want to expedite that a little bit faster, you can take a hair dryer or a heat gun to it, but just be gentle on it. And again, over time this will settle out to be a little bit smoother. And that was a look and installation of the BAKFlip G2 folding hard tonneau cover on a 2022 Nissan Frontier.